My name is Amber Frell, 25 years old. At 6:40 in the morning on Christmas morning, my mother ripped my stocking off the mantle, threw it into the fireplace, and spat. You have ruined every Christmas since you were born. We never wanted you here. My father slammed a trash bag of my clothes against my chest so hard I hit the wall, growling, "Finally, pack your crap and get the hell out of our house." My sister stood on the stairs filming it all, laughing as she said, "Good luck starting over, loser. No one in this family is going to miss a worthless burden like you." I swallowed the lump in my throat and stared at the floor. I just took the small walnut box my grandfather gave me 9 years ago, walked out into the snow, and drove to Northern Trust. The bank manager locked the door behind me, looked me in the eyes, and said, "Miss Frell, sit down. What I am about to show you is going to change everything your family just did to you." Before I tell you how my grandfather destroyed them from the grave, hit like and subscribe. Drop your city and local time below. I love knowing where you are listening from. Let me take you back to that morning properly. Amber Frell is the name I gave the internet. The internet loves a catchy username, a clean victim narrative, and a quick soundbite. My real name is Maya. I am 26 years old, and I am an emergency room trauma nurse. When you spend 60 hours a week holding pressure on severed arteries and stabilizing gunshot victims while addicts spit on your scrubs, your nervous system fundamentally changes. Panic becomes a foreign language. Sitting in my battered Honda Civic that Christmas morning, the heater blasting against my frozen hands, I looked at the bruise already forming on my collarbone from where my father threw the trash bag. I looked at the small dovetailed walnut box resting on the passenger seat. The snow was coming down thick, burying the windshield. Most people would break down. Most people would text their mother, begging for forgiveness for a crime they never committed. My mother, Brenda, thrived on that exact cycle. Years ago, Brenda drained my college savings account. $18,000, completely wiped out. I confronted her in the kitchen, holding the bank statement. She just laughed, stirring her coffee, and told me I was a worker bee, not a scholar. She needed that money to buy my sister, Sienna, a new car for her rising influencer career. She expected me to cry. She expected me to fold. She thought screaming in my face would permanently break my spirit. She forgot I run trauma codes for a living. A 50-year-old narcissist throwing a tantrum over a burned stocking is just background noise. I shifted the car into drive and headed downtown. The lobby of the bank was quiet, smelling of old paper and polished marble. I placed the walnut box on the desk of the branch manager. He took one look at the burned initials carved into the wood, stood up, and pulled the blinds down over his office windows. He unlocked his bottom drawer and pulled out a thick navy blue folder. My grandfather, Arthur, had been dead for over a year, but his presence in that room suddenly felt heavier than the marble pillars outside. The manager slid the folder across the desk. Inside lay an irrevocable trust and a payable on death account ledger. My grandfather had not just left me a note of encouragement, he left me a fortress. The payable on death account held $250,000 in cash, entirely bypassing the probate courts. My mother had no legal right to even know it existed, but that was just the cash. Beneath the ledger sat a notarized property deed. 9 years ago, recognizing the toxic rot festering in his own daughter, Grandpa Arthur quietly transferred the title of the $950,000 suburban estate into the trust. My mother, my father, and my golden child sister were currently sleeping in a house they did not own. They were tenants at will in my property. I traced my grandfather's signature with my index finger. The ink was faded, but the intent was absolute. He had spent nearly a decade sitting quietly at the dinner table, watching Brenda tear me down, all while holding the absolute legal power to destroy her. He never used it. He saved it for me. The manager handed me a cashier's check, offered a sad, knowing smile, and slid his business card across the desk. He told me his promise to Arthur was fulfilled, and the rest was up to me. He walked out of the office, leaving me alone with an empire. I used a fraction of that cash to retain the estate attorney my grandfather had pre-selected. She filed the formal 30-day notice to quit the premises. I did not text my family. I did not gloat. I let the law do the talking. Brenda and Sienna treated the legal notice like junk mail. Narcissists believe the rules of the universe bend to their whims. Sienna texted me a photo of my old bedroom, the walls gutted, and my remaining belongings shoved into garbage bags. She told me she was turning my room into her new podcast studio and warned me not to come back for my trash. 2 days later, Brenda posted a massive announcement on her Facebook page. She invited her thousands of followers to a live house renovation reveal, bragging about how she had finally cleansed the family home of toxic, ungrateful energy. I sat in the hospital break room, eating a stale sandwich, and stared at the live stream schedule on my phone. They were building the stage for their own execution. I forwarded the live stream link and the scheduled time directly to the Lake County Sheriff's Civil Division, confirming the exact hour the squatters would be gathered in the living room for the execution of the court-ordered writ of possession. The day of the live stream arrived. I parked my car at the end of the long, snow-covered driveway of my estate. On my phone screen, Brenda and Sienna were practically glowing. They clinked champagne glasses. Sienna adjusted her ring light, thanking her 15,000 live viewers for supporting their journey through family trauma. Brenda leaned into the frame, wiping a fake tear, talking about the sacrifices she made for an ungrateful daughter. Then came the knock. It was heavy, authoritative, and loud enough to rattle the microphone. Brenda smiled brightly at the camera, assuming it was a flower delivery or a neighbor coming to congratulate them. She walked off screen. The heavy oak door swung open. No screaming. No dramatic confrontations from me, just the cold, booming voice of the Lake County Sheriff echoing through the hallway and directly into Sienna's live microphone. He announced he was executing a court-ordered writ of possession. He stated clearly and unequivocally that the property belonged solely to Maya, and they had exactly 30 minutes to gather essential belongings and vacate the premises immediately. On the screen, Sienna's face drained of all color. Her jaw went slack. The phone slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor, the camera lens pointing sideways at the baseboards. But the microphone was still live. The chat exploded. Thousands of comments poured in, a relentless avalanche of realization, mockery, and absolute shock. The viewers realized in real time that the women claiming victimhood were actually squatters being forcibly removed from a house they had stolen from their own flesh and blood. I stood at the end of the driveway, sipping my coffee. The front door opened again. Brenda stumbled out first, clutching a single trash bag of clothes, her face sagging, the arrogant light completely extinguished from her eyes. Sienna followed, sobbing hysterically, hiding her face behind her coat. My father, Greg, walked behind them, his head hung low, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. The deputies escorted them past the property line. I did not say a single word to them. My silence was absolute. They moved into a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a strip mall, utterly humiliated. But toxic entitlement refuses to die quietly. 2 weeks later, desperate for money after Sienna lost every single brand deal from the live stream disaster, they decided to strike one last time. At 2 a.m, my iPad chimed with a motion alert. I was working the night shift at the trauma center. I tapped the notification. My grandfather's detached garage appeared on the screen, illuminated by the infrared glow of the battery-operated trail cameras I had hidden in the rafters. Brenda and Sienna were prying the heavy side door open with crowbars. They had used an old copied gate remote to bypass the driveway security. Sienna was holding her phone up, recording the break-in, whispering to her non-existent audience about reclaiming stolen family heirlooms. Their target was Grandpa Arthur's highly valuable antique woodworking lathes. They intended to pawn them. I did not call them to gloat. I did not warn them. I hit the silent alarm button on my security app and went back to charting patient vitals. The police caught them mid-swing. Because Sienna had deliberately filmed her own premeditated intent on her phone, there was no claiming they wandered in by mistake. It was a documented, undeniable Class 2 felony. They were arrested in the snow, handcuffed in the very driveway they used to brag about. My father, finally broken by the sheer, undeniable criminality of his wife and golden child, packed his bags that same night. He abandoned Brenda, moving out of state and disappearing from their lives completely. The toxic family dismantled itself, piece by piece, by their own greedy hands. The judge sentenced Brenda and Sienna to substantial probation, heavy community service, and a restitution order they will be paying off for the next decade. The local community ostracized them. Brenda lost her salon clients. Sienna's digital footprint guaranteed she would never secure another sponsorship or pass a corporate background check again. A few months later, a letter arrived in my mailbox. The handwriting belonged to Brenda. It was the classic hollow echo of a narcissist. She wrote about family bonds, about how she did her best, about how I owed her a conversation to heal the past. I stood in my kitchen, the morning sun warming the hardwood floors my grandfather laid down 50 years ago. I did not feel a spike of rage. I did not feel the need to draft a furious reply. I looked at the letter, dropped it directly into the shredder, and went back to brewing my coffee. That is the moment you know you have truly won. When their attempts to hurt you do not even register on your emotional radar, my life now is quiet. I still work in the emergency room because I love the chaos of saving lives. But I come home to a sanctuary. The house is filled with friends who respect my boundaries, colleagues who support my ambitions, and a profound, unshakable peace. The chaos of my past feels like a movie I watched a long time ago. If you are listening to this and you are trapped in a house that feels like a war zone, I need you to understand the psychology of the people hurting you. Toxic families operate on a system of fake math. They designate one child as the golden asset and the other as the permanent deduction. They subtract your worth daily, not because you are worthless, but because making you feel small is the only way they feel tall. I learned 3 brutal rules from surviving Brenda and Sienna. Rule number 1, silence is a strategy. When an abuser expects you to scream, giving them nothing starves them of their power. They want your reaction. They use your anger to prove to the world that you are the crazy one. You do not owe your abusers a screaming match. You do not owe them an explanation. You owe them paperwork. You owe them boundaries. You let the law, the truth, and the consequences do the screaming for you. Rule number 2, real love works in the background. My grandfather never raised his voice to my mother. He never picked a fight at the dinner table, but he spent 9 years building a legal fortress so I would have a door to walk through when the time came. Blood does not make you family. A shared last name does not require your loyalty. Protective loyalty, the kind that signs a trust in silence and waits for you to be ready. That is family. Trust is earned, not owed by birthright. Rule number 3, never interrupt an entitled person making a public mistake. Narcissism is its own trap. Brenda and Sienna's obsessive need for public validation, their desperate hunger for an audience, was the exact weapon that destroyed them. When someone is determined to dig their own grave and broadcast it to the world, your only job is to hand them a bigger shovel and step out of the way. You are allowed to walk away from people who hurt you. Setting down a heavy burden is not surrender. It is just gravity finally working the way it is supposed to. Have you ever had to walk away from the people who were supposed to protect you, only to realize you were actually protecting yourself from them? Drop your story in the comments. You are not alone in this fight. I am Maya. I am free. And the door my grandfather built for me remains locked to the people who tried to burn me down.